In accordance with the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been approved by mailing the annual schedule of the meeting by the electronic advance notice of at least 48 hours pursuant to NJSA 10491 as permitted during a declared emergency to the Star Ledger Union County local source, Kenilworth website, by posting such annual meetings scheduled on the bulletin board at Borough Hall, reserved for such announcements, and the proper filing of said notice with the Borough Clerk. Formal action may be taken at this meeting. If you wish to attend this virtual meeting, please click on the following link and/or call into the number provided. Clicking on the link provides a visual and audio access and will allow you to comment and/or ask a question at the proper time during the meeting. Calling the number will allow you to hear the meeting and also comment and/or ask questions at the proper time. The phone number is 908-276-9090. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to issues that are relevant to the board, that the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and the quorum appropriate to judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. And we all rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with
liberty and
justice for all. Thank you. Yeah. Roll call, please.
Mr. Paserno?
Here.
Mr. Shoki?
Here.
Mr. David?
Here.
Mr. Grimaldi?
Here.
Mr. Bentina?
Here.
Mr. Maggio?
Here.
Mr. Ladowdy?
Here.
Mr. Scuderi?
Here.
Mr. Herbalario?
Here.
Mr. Zaharchak?
Here.
And Mr. McMahon?
Here. Okay, thank you, everyone. Can we have a motion to approve the February 13 meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, the motion was made by Mr. Grimaldi, seconded by Mr. Scuderi. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Moving on to resolution legal services for the planning board attorney. And I have something here that I need to read. And here we go. This resolution says, whereas pursuant to the fair and open process rule, advertisements for proposal were published in the local source and posted on the Borough of Kenilworth's website, and proposals were received and reviewed for planning board attorney for the year 2020. And whereas, after review of said proposal, Louis B. Rago, 25 Lindsley Drive, Suite 200, Morristown, New Jersey, 07960, was appointed by the Planning Board on January 1st, 2020. Now, therefore, be it resolved, after review of said proposal, that the Planning Board appoint Louis B. Rago as Planning Board Attorney for the year 2020 at a rate of $1,000 per month and $165 per hour for litigation matters as deemed necessary by the Planning Board, and the same is hereby confirmed effective January 1, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, I will move the read resolution.
So moved by David, seconded by Mr. Grimaldi. Roll call, please.
Mr. Paserno?
Yes.
Mr. Shoki?
Yes.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Grimaldi?
Yes.
Mr. Bentina?
Yes.
Mr. Maggio?
Yes.
Mr. Ladowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Scuderi?
Yes.
Mr. Herbalario?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome aboard, group.
Mr.
No, I'm sorry.
Mr. Zaharchak? Sean?
Yeah, it was muted. Yes.
And Mr. McMahon?
Yes.
Okay. That's everyone?
Yep.
Okay, Lou, again, welcome aboard. Okay, any communications, Kathy?
None, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We have old business, application 2, certificate of non-conformity from LRAL. I want to yield to Mr. Rego. Mr. Rego, can you please bring us up to speed on the postponement? Mr. Rego?
He's muted.
You need to unmute. Kathy, you can't control him?
Can I control
Should
it?
be okay. I should be okay.
Okay.
Am I okay now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it's just going on and off. Okay. The board may recall we started this application right before the pandemic hit for certificate of non-conformity. Since then, we've not met. The applicant was scheduled for tonight. We received a letter from Stephen Hale. He had apparently had an issue contacting his client. He requested that we put this off until the July, I believe it's the July 9th meeting. He extended our timing to make a decision through the end of July. If it needs to be further extended, I'm sure he will accommodate us. The only thing I want to add, which the applicant's attorney totally agrees with, is that given the starts and stops with this application, I've asked that they renotice and republish for the July 9th meeting, and they do not have a problem with that. So what's in front of the board is just carrying it to July 9th. This is not a no further notice situation. They will renotice and republish.
Thank you, Mr. Rego.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyone have any comment for Mr. Rego? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to our next item, which is new business. And I think at this time, Kathy and Laura, I think you can bring everybody in at this point. Mr. O'Brien?
Chairman, I note that the attorney for the applicant rally was in my list a moment ago. Seems to have disappeared. I did not know if he wanted to say anything or not. That was Mr. Bonner.
Mr. Bonner. Is Mr. Bonner out there?
He was listed at the bottom. He seems
He
to have...
he was popping in and out. Currently, I don't have him on our participants board.
Okay. Let me do this officially then, because moving on to new business, let me just put this out there. This is a zoning application 1-10, County of Union, Galloping Hill Service Yard, 21 North 31st Street, Kenilworth, New Jersey, Block 184, Lot 3. And who's here on behalf of that?
This is Mike Brennan from Union County.
Hello, Mr. Brennan, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Mr. Campbell and Mr. Trapassi from Union County were having some difficulty getting on, but they are attempting.
Okay. Would you...
New dogs and new tricks.
Yes. Mr. Brennan, or let me ask Mr. Rego.
Yes.
Mr. Rego, seeing that the attorney needed to speak here, would we like to push this and go to the master plan consistency review and give them enough time to come back to this? Would you like to do that, Mr. Brennan?
If you need the attorney present, I certainly am familiar with the project and can update you, but if it needs to be through an attorney, then yes, certainly we can leave.
Rich, I think that's a good idea. Why don't we move on? Neither the master plan consistency, well, that should not take long. And when Mr. Campbell does come on, if you'd let us know, then we can interrupt what we're doing and get back to you guys. I think if we're going to have a courtesy review, we should have some form to it. And if he's available, fine. I've done reviews without the attorney present, but it's good if he's trying to get on board, then let's give him some time to get on board.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. David, you okay with that?
Yes, that's perfectly fine. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I think the board is all in favor of that, so if you don't mind, we'll move on to the next order of business. First of all, let me make sure, Mr. Brennan, you're okay with that as well? I want to make sure everybody is good.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Yeah, just barge in when your attorney is available, and we'll see what we can do.
Will do. Appreciate it.
As Mr. Rego just barged in. Okay. So what we have now is we're going to go to the master plan consistency review of the land use ordinance. And I think what I'm going to do at this point is yield again to Mr. O'Brien to take the floor and have him talk about some of these items.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the planning board, as I discussed earlier, has the responsibility of reviewing any new amendments to the land use ordinance and recommending them to the Borough Council. What you have in front of you is a draft article for the land use ordinance that discusses enforcement violations and penalties. This information had been scattered through the 2015 ordinance, and over the last couple of years it became obvious that that was not working for the borough. Came to a head in the fall of 2019, and in collaboration with the Borough Council, members of the board, I prepared a draft that discusses how enforcement of the zoning ordinance will occur, as well as assessing violations and penalties. This is all in one place. It's going to be its own article within the land use ordinance. And after your review of it, it would be up to the board to pass a resolution declaring whether or not this proposed article is consistent with the master plan, and then referring it to the Borough Council for action.
Okay. Let me just comment on that. I remember this going on and on for a while. I do think that the study is absolutely necessary. I also think that this study should not be hurried, however, be thorough, and it should be very well thought out. I think you need the time to put into this, to bring it back to the board, you know, in a not only a timely manner, but in not so much an expeditious manner. So,
if I may interrupt, we're discussing the land use ordinance now, which is the Article 36, enforcement violations and penalties.
Right. I'm sorry, Mr. O'Brien. I was ahead of myself.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. David, did you have something to say?
No, I think, you know, my initial question was, you know, what brought it about. I think Mr. O'Brien obviously just spelled that out. So I think I'm good.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. So basically what they're asking, yes, sir? Who's speaking?
Rich, it's Lou. It's Lou.
Okay, hold on a second, Lou. Borough and or Kathy, I can't see everybody. I only have 5 people on the side, so is there another way I could see people either raising their hand rather than shouting out?
Up at the top, do you have it set to speaker view, Mr. Chairman?
I have.
Top right corner? Okay.
Okay. All right, Lou, go ahead.
2 things. First of all, in my experience with these types of reviews, the consistency, normally our planner would take a position, it's consistent, it's substantially consistent, it's not inconsistent. There's a number of different shades of that. Kevin, I'm assuming since you drafted this, in your view, it's consistent with our master plan.
As your borough planner, I believe that it is consistent with our master plan.
Okay.
Our master plan does call for enforcement of the ordinance, as well as penalties to be assessed when the ordinance is not followed.
All right. that would go a long way toward our ultimate, toward the planning board's recommendation that it is consistent with the master plan. The other question I had for you, Kevin, on the first page of the proposed ordinance, section, it's 36.3, certificates and permits, temporary use permits.
Yes.
Okay. If you flip the page over, it talks about situations where maybe a temporary use permit might be appropriate under certain circumstances, and the zoning officer would have the authority to issue that. The top of the next page, it talks about the planning board may, et cetera, direct the zoning officer to issue a permit. Do we really want the planning board to be able to do that? I don't know if we want to do that. I mean, if there's a crisis, how can we get the planning board together and direct you to issue or not issue a permit? That's something, I don't know if we want to be involved in that as a planning board. That's my thought. I don't know. Maybe the zoning officer could do that.
Mr. O'Brien?
That's a policy issue for the board. We threw it in there because we did not think the zoning officer on their own should have that power to allow something that is not allowed in the ordinance of their own volition. This refers to something that's a non-conforming use, but the board could, under special circumstances as defined by the board, grant that temporary use permit. We were reluctant in our discussions of setting this up, of giving the authority to the zoning officer. It just seemed to be a lot of power for one person.
Yeah, we've had, in the context of zoning board representation, many of my boards have had matters where someone wants to sell Christmas trees for a month at a time on a residential zone. And it's not permitted. They come to the zoning board, and we quickly hear it, and if it's reasonable, we grant the temporary use variance for a 12-month period of time, etc. There are temporary permits for fireworks displays and parades and all that. But if it's an emergent matter, I understand we can't turn a zoning officer loose. I mean, if we had it may not be appropriate, but I think we need to rethink that, because it might be cumbersome to have the planning board as an entity get involved and direct you what to do or not to do. I could see if someone came in front of the planning board wearing your zoning board hat, where they could get relief for a period of time. But for a permit, I think we should think about that, but which is fine. I mean, we don't need to make a change now, but I think it's I was just thinking it through. And I don't know if you want to.
Mr. Rego, Mr. O'Brien, I'd like to hear what the board has to say on that, because you bring up a good issue.
Okay.
Anyone from the board have something to add or not to that? Seeing none.
No, I think Mr. Pantina has a comment.
Mr. Pantina, please.
Yeah, sorry about that. If you don't feel comfortable with the planning board turning the zoning officer loose, as you said, as you may think, like in the case of an emergency, how are you going to get the board together? You also have someone else of the borough, like possibly either the borough engineer or I guess, I don't know, council or something like that. I mean, to have somebody else that would be around on a daily basis as opposed to waiting for the group to come back on a monthly basis.
Mr. Rego?
Yeah, Nick, I think that's a good concept. I'm just trying to get the board as an entity out of the way. Maybe the zoning officer in consultation with the engineer. Sometimes the municipal attorneys get involved. Sometimes the mayors get involved. just so long as there's constraints and guardrails, so that we don't have a zoning officer and an engineer permitting something for 2 years when it's not permitted, and that would be circumventing the zoning board's power. So I think with appropriate restrictions and guardrails, we can do something like that. I think the zoning officer may not want to stick his or her rear end out there, but maybe in consultation with the engineer and something else, we could do that.
Okay.
Right, I mean, you can write it up, sorry.
Nick, I have to go to the show of hands so we can keep order, okay? So we're going to go to Mr. Grimaldi first, then we have Mr. O'Brien, then you, okay?
I was going to say, first, we're Zooming now, so we can get the board together more quickly than we ever could before. But I understand what you're saying, and maybe it's a matter of that you let the engineer and the zoning board, the zoning officer, make a statement and approve it until such time as the next normal meeting. So it limits the time that this seat of the pants ruling gets put in place, and then we get the full board's input on it within the month's time.
Okay, Mr. O'Brien.
I was going to make that suggestion, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Grimaldi.
Okay, Mr. Pantina.
Do that.
Well, that seems, did anyone else have a hand? That seemed to be a good resolution to have that until they can meet again. That's a great idea. Great idea, Mr. Grimaldi.
Good. Very good.
Are you raising your hand, Grimaldi? Yes. Go ahead.
Do we have to vote on this tonight, or can we read it more? Because I'm sorry, I just read it today.
Well, we only have a page and a half here resolution. I mean, how much do we have to get through here? I'd like to see if we can get this done.
Yeah.
If everyone don't mind. Mr. Rego.
And again, Kevin has indicated that as our planner, he views this as consistent with the master plan, which is a key, you know, from a planning perspective. Certainly the board can add tweaks here and there, but right now we're just looking for, is it overall consistent? And it seems to be yes.
Okay. Mr. Grimaldi?
Question. Second page, A, number 1, well, with the fine. So that's no more than $1,000, but that's $1,000 per day? Okay.
Was that a yes, Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you're an architect.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Is everyone on this board understand and have read the resolution and all be okay with it?
Yes.
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 I see.
Yes.
Yep. Thumbs up. Okay. Do we need to enter that that statement that was made by Mr. Grimaldi into that as a condition? Or how would you like to handle that, Mr. Ray?
Yeah.
I think.
Say, Mr. Ray.
Yeah, normally, when the board determines that it's consistent with the master plan, traditionally, like, there'll be a letter written. It can be written by Kathy, it can be written by you, Rich, it can be written by Kevin, that the board met on such and such a night and determined that proposed ordinance, whatever, is consistent with the master plan. That's all you really need. If we want to add, however, we recommend the following modifications, that's fine. It can be done by letter.
Okay. Mr. Rego, can I just hold you up a minute?
Yeah.
There's someone out there that has some background noise, and I don't want Kathy to mute everyone at this point. If someone could just figure out if that's a TV or someone in the background and help us out, because it's very, very much distorted. Okay, thank you. So, Mr. O'Brien?
Thank you, Chairman. If the board and the chair directs, we can revise this draft to make it that the zoning officer has the authority to grant one of those temporary use permits in consultation with other board professionals, and such decision will be ratified, reviewed by the planning board at their next regularly scheduled meeting.
I'm fine with that. Everyone else?
And can add for no longer than X days, 30 days, just so we have a time limit.
Okay, 30 days is fine. Mr. Grimaldi, I saw your hand.
Thumbs up.
Okay, thumbs up. Okay, are we all good with that? Looks good?
Yes, sir.
How about a vote on this?
I make a motion to approve it with recommendations.
I second.
Okay, the motion was made by Mr. Grimaldi to approve with a revised recommendation, is that correct?
We'll revise the document, so one whole document will go to the council.
Okay, and seconded by Mr. Pantina?
Yes.
All in favor? Sorry, roll call, please.
Mr. Paterno?
Yes.
Mr. Schulte?
Yes.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Grimaldi?
Yes.
Mr. Pantina?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzio?
Yes.
Mr. Ladowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Scuderi?
Yes.
Mr. Hovalario?
Yes.
Mr. Zaharchek?
Yes.
Mr. McMahon?
Yes.
And Mr. Coelho?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, that's great. I'd like to see if we have Mr. Brennan back and maybe the attorney showed up, and let's go backwards a little bit. Brennan, you still out there?
Hello, Kevin Campbell. Yeah, Kevin Campbell of the Union County Council's office.
Okay, Kevin Campbell. Hold on, let me get that down, please. Can we see Mr. Campbell, Captain?
Can we see him? I think he's on the, I see a phone. I don't think we can see his picture. I think.
I'm sorry. If somebody could instruct me how to do that without breaking his connection, which took me nearly a half hour to get. I'm not technical savvy.
Laura, do you know how to show Mr. Campbell?
Not without breaking the connection, no.
I don't know if it's critical to see him. I'll leave it up to the board, as long as we can hear him and hear his witnesses and see what they have to say.
So we would have to, well, let me ask Mr. Rego. Mr. Rego, do we need to swear witnesses here?
I've seen it done both ways. We're not required to. Again, this is a courtesy review. The county is going to be telling us what they would like to do. We can make recommendations if we think it will make the project better. And they can either smile and leave the room or pick up our recommendations or not. So I don't think we need to have anyone sworn in at this point in time.
I don't necessarily, well, I'm not going to say that. So, Mr. Campbell, then, I guess you have, there's witnesses and people here that you are going to present as well?
Yes, that's correct. Just by way of introduction, in case anybody is unaware of it, I was here before the board for a courtesy review of a storage shed that we intend to put up in Galloping Hill Golf Course in the area where there is already a park facility for various park operations and golf course operations. I will begin by asking Mike Brennan to testify about or just to explain what the shed involves and what purpose it will serve for park operations.
Okay. Let me just conduct a little order here. First of all, I hear a lot of things going on, and it's difficult for us to record this. So I'm going to ask again, if you have any background phones, anything else going on, please shut them down during this meeting, please. Mr. Rego, did you want to say something before Mr. Brennan took the floor? And it would be nice if you were unmuted.
Unmute. There we go. What I'd like to do is to swear in Kevin and Chris, our consultants, and let's take them one at a time with the county's consultants. We can swear them in as well, just to cover the bases. All right, Kevin and Chris, are you there?
Yes.
All right, with regard to this matter, do you swear that your comments and testimony will be true, so help you God?
I do.
All right, that's Chris Cueto is the board engineer. Kevin O'Brien is our board planner. Mr. Campbell, if we could have, is it Mr. Brennan?
Yes, Michael Brennan.
Michael Brennan. Mr. Brennan, with regard to this matter, do you swear that your comments and testimony shall be the truth?
I do.
Okay. Mr. Campbell, why don't you just introduce Mr. Brennan, tell us who he is, what he does, and then he can tell us what he needs to tell us.
Yes, Mr. Brennan is the Director of Park Maintenance at the Union County Department of Parks. And I will ask you to give a little bit background about himself for the board to begin with.
You've got the floor, Mr. Brennan.
Yeah, as a county employee in Parks and Recreation for the last 10 to 15 years, just a little by way of background, people who aren't familiar with the site, it was the former trades of Parks and Recreation. There were some old buildings there that were removed when golf course operations took over and they put a new building up. Subsequently, the trades were assumed into the Elizabeth operation under facilities in Elizabeth. Obviously, the constraints of Elizabeth for some of the trades, the space is very tight and keeps getting tighter. So the county would like to put up a storage shed for its masonry operations for various, and there is the director of facilities here as well who can tell you exactly what the masons do daily, but basically it would be a storage shed for their scaffolding and some of their equipment, etc. They would not be accessing it, reporting there daily, but they would be accessing it likely daily. So as a way of traffic, there would be no parking necessarily on site, but there would be coming and going out of the service entrance as they used to and still do for golf operations.
Mike, so the shed would serve the purpose for park maintenance at the golf course?
Maintenance of the golf course, maintenance of the parks, and any other county facilities that need maintenance.
Okay.
From a masonry.
Do you think this would be an improvement over the current situation? If so, why?
Yeah, well, like I said, the constraints of the space in Elizabeth makes it very difficult to operate, and you know, they're right now working out of they have to take everything down an elevator and to load it into the trucks on a daily basis. So this would make the operation a lot easier.
A lot more efficient, Mike?
Absolutely.
I don't have any further questions of this, Mr. Brennan. Does the members of the board have?
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Do any members of the board have any questions for Mr. Campbell and or Mike Brennan? I don't see anyone. Mr. Rago?
No, I have no questions. I'm just, I'm looking at Christian's report, though, or Victor Venega's report, which I'm assuming will be addressed just in terms of recommendations that he's making.
Okay. Mr. O'Brien?
No questions at this time, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? How about Mr. David? Any questions for Mr. Campbell or Mr. Mike Brennan?
In looking at the picture, so I see the proposed storage building, and then there are what look like 2 tractor trailers located there. So is this storage facility going to replace those tractor trailers, or?
Yes, it will.
It will, okay.
So, Mike, therefore, this would present a more aesthetic appearance for the area?
Is that Mr. Campbell speaking?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Mike.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but I would say yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And one additional thing, can Mr. Brennan describe the materials to be used in constructing the proposed storage building for record?
Yes, it is similar to the existing structure there in that it is a cement slab with a all steel building. It does have windows and a garage door, regular steel roll-up garage door.
So, trucks and other large motor vehicles would be able to enter this site?
Yes, you can get a mason dump into the building. It's about, I believe, a 30 by 40 building, 30 by 50 building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Mr. Campbell, is that the end of your testimony? Is that all you have?
Yeah, that's the end for Mr. Brennan's testimony. I'll ask Mr. Safarisa, Charlie Safarisa, of the Director of Facilities for the county, to testify next.
Is Charlie on? Kathy, you have Charlie on you? I see a phone number that's muted, but...
There he is. Okay.
Charlie, you?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you just state your name and for the record, please?
Yes, Charles Sharafesi, Chirafesi.
Thank you.
Mr. Sharafesi, could you state what your title is and what your duties are and how long you've been carrying them out for the county?
Yes, I am currently Director of Facilities Management. I've had that title for almost 6 years now. So our responsibility is we maintain all the buildings in the county, as far as all the trades, electric, plumbing, mason, carpentry, painting, everything.
Okay. Mr. Schmari, could you provide more detail than Mr. Brennan did as to what purpose this building will serve?
Well, right now, like Mike was saying, we currently store our masonry materials all over the county. We have 3 locations. One's up in the mountains. We have some down here at the motor vehicle facility. We have some stored in the old jail at the courthouse here. Like Mike was saying, we have to, bring stuff up and down by use of elevator. So it's more advantageous to have this building in Kenilworth. It's kind of centrally located in the county, and we can fit everything under the one roof.
Okay. Can you just expand on what would the hours of operation be? Would they be the same that are currently at this site?
Yes, like 7 to 3:30, 7:30 to 4, no later than that. And this is already underneath
materials use, or is this consistent with what's already taking place there?
It's consistent with what's taking place there.
And would this be more efficient for the county in its use of resources than the current state?
Absolutely.
Do you have any other comments you can offer about this site?
No. It's easily accessible. Like I said, it's centrally located in the county, so it makes sense for us. And it's going to store, scaffolding, plank, cement, some cement mixers, things of that nature.
It wouldn't be a high volume facility, would it, in terms of traffic?
No.
How many vehicles do you think would enter and exit a day?
It depends. It could be 1, 2 a day. There may be, a week or a few days that go by that nobody goes there.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Does any member of the board have questions?
Yes, I do. This is Rich Pasterno here. Charlie, if I may, what's your entrance and egress point? Where is that coming in and out of?
There's a 10 by 10 overhead door, and there's two 36 by 80 walk-in man doors. One on the right side of the building, one on the back side of the building.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. From what point you're coming in? From the boulevard? From how do you get in?
Oh yeah, from the boulevard into our service yard.
And that's over there, the wall on the left. Is that how you're going in?
I'm sorry, repeat that please.
How are you getting in? What street? Which way do you get in there and come out of there when you're bringing in supplies?
No, we go in and out through off of Kenilworth Boulevard. So that would be,
Charlie, one question, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're not talking about the entrance to the golf course, are you?
No, entrance to the service yard, which is right next to the cemetery, kind of across the street from the Acme.
Okay. Okay. I know where you're going in now at this point. Now,
right where that those strip stores, that little strip stores are.
Yeah, that's what I said earlier, like near the little mini mall. You're to the right of the little mini mall, you're going down that street to the right, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for these gentlemen? Okay.
No, sir.
No? Okay. Mr. Campbell, anyone else that you have?
Yes, my final witness will be Paul Lesso of the County Engineering Department.
Okay. Lesso, I saw you up there before. Oh, there you are. Hi, Paul. You're on mute, Paul. Bottom left. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you now. That's a good evening. How you doing?
Very good. Mr. Lesso, with regard to this matter, do you swear the testimony will be the truth?
I do.
Spell your last name, please, for the record.
Lesso, L-E-S-O.
Okay. And you can tell the board and the public what who you are and what you do.
I'm a supervising engineer for the County of Union. I'm also licensed as an engineer and a land surveyor.
Okay.
Mr. Lesso, you have drawn up a site plan in regards to this matter, correct?
Yes.
And the site plan has been received by the Kenilworth Board of Planning, correct?
That's correct.
Now, are you able to look at the, can we collectively look at the site plan so that you can describe it or answer any questions for the board?
I am.
Mr. Campbell, can you excuse me 1 minute? Kathy, can you mute everyone else except Mr. Campbell and Mr. Lesso?
I just muted Mr. Brennan. I thought he was the issue. Okay. And everybody else, I think, is muted.
Okay. So during this questioning, gentlemen, of course, you're going to go back and forth. If someone has a question, I'll see you show up and I'll direct Kathy will open up the mic, okay? Just keep the background on. Okay. I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell, before you interrupt.
That's okay. I was, Paul, when I was watching, I'm able to watch when I see on my computer screen, although I don't have microphones or speakers to speak into the computer, so I'm using my telephone. But the reason I brought that up was because I saw before what looked like a photo of the site, and are you able to, can we somehow or collectively look at the site plan?
I have the site plan up on my computer, so I can look at that. I'm not sure about the rest of the board.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may, what the gentleman's referring to is Mr. Grimaldi added, said as his background so everybody can see it.
Right. If Mr. Lesso shares his screen, we should be able to see what he has.
Well, let's see what I can do.
Kathy, can you enable Mr. Lesso to do it?
Oh, do you have it on your desktop?
Well, I do. I have it on my remote desktop from the county. But it's the site plan that was provided.
By your phone?
This is what I'm looking at. Can you see it?
Yeah, Mr. Grimaldi has the same site plan up in the bottom left. I don't know where you're looking, but Mr. Grimaldi.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, I hope this is satisfactory. I'm not an engineer. Paul, could you provide, please, details about your site plan for the board?
The site plan depicts that area of the Galloping Hill Service Yard where the proposed shed is to be located. That shed, as we previously mentioned, is 30 feet by 50 feet. The access to the site is from North 31st Street up at the boulevard. There's two other existing facilities there. It's the, I guess, the fuel dispensing area, and there's an existing maintenance building.
Okay, and
I was going to add, in terms of the site, the property, I guess, to the southwest is at a higher elevation, and as I'm sure as the board knows, the boulevard is much higher than this location. So when you go from the boulevard onto North 31st, that will take you down into the site. So I don't foresee that there would be any drainage issues associated with this proposed building. Additionally, the area that the proposed location is impervious, so there would be no additional runoff generated.
Is impervious, you said?
Yes.
Okay. Could you also testify about the not just the drainage, but any other questions the board had regarding this matter in regards to traffic access?
I'll confirm what was the previous testimony, that the access would be via North 31st Street off of the boulevard.
Okay. Is there adequate parking at this site for employees who might be working at this location?
Based on the anticipated, I guess, number of trips, 1 or 2 a day, the answer is yes.
Would there be additional lighting at this facility, at this location because of this facility?
To my knowledge, it's not proposed.
Okay. There is already lighting here in the evenings at night?
I would defer that to...
Yeah, Mike or Charlie, could you answer that?
Yes, if I'm you, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Charlie.
Yes, there's adequate lighting already there.
Okay. Well, would this interfere with any neighboring properties, this shed?
In my opinion, no.
Okay. Would it have any impact on aesthetics to the surrounding area?
Quoting Mr. Brennan, it's in the eye of the beholder, but no, I don't think so.
Okay. Would you see this as any kind of additional use for the area that is already been beyond what's already existing?
Kevin, I didn't hear the second or third word that you said. Could you repeat that?
Okay. Could you tell me if this would have any additional use beyond what is already present? In other words, there's already a location there for obviously public facilities / maintenance operations. Would this be any kind of addition to that in different areas?
The area is already a maintenance yard, and it would just be. I don't think it wouldn't be an expansion of an existing use. It's just it's the same use.
Mr. Rizzo, I asked you to review the Kenilworth master plan earlier today. Did you have a chance to do so?
I did.
Okay. Based upon your review of this matter and your site plan, would you say that, could you tell the board if you think this would have any kind of impact, negative impact on Borough Kenilworth?
I believe that would have no adverse impact.
Could you say if this was consistent with what you read in the Kenilworth master plan?
Yes, this proposed building is consistent.
Mr. Lezo, any further comments would you wish to make regarding this facility?
No comments.
Okay, just one last question. In your engineering opinion, is this shed being properly engineered to state and local requirements?
I believe it has, and that will also be confirmed by the building inspector when a building permit is issued.
Okay. There's no wetlands or flooding issues in this remark, I believe you said earlier. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. I have no further questions. If members of the board do, please feel free.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lezo, Mr. Campbell. Does any members of the board or our professionals need to speak to the engineer? I don't see any. Is that you, Mr. Olazati? Show of hands or no? Okay. All right. Mr. David, please.
Yeah. Looking at the site plan, I believe that fueling area was something the board had previously approved. May have been last year. I can't remember. Time goes by. But it looks like there's sufficient room between the new structure and that fueling area. But my question is will the new structure won't interfere with that fueling area, will it?
It won't. It will not.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
Mr. Pantino?
Hi, Paul.
Hey, Nate, how are you?
Good. Hey, would it be, I noticed in the cursory review, but could the county supply the board, just for the records, I think it would make it easier to try to visualize this building other than the 4 blue lines are on the plan, but maybe get a set of the fabrication plans. I assume is it going to be like a masonry building, or are you going to like have out there?
It'll be a prefab, I believe, steel structure. I think Charlie Shiravasi could better describe it than me.
So maybe you could just provide a set of the fab drawings, like that could show 3D view of it, I guess.
That's certainly possible, yes.
We're given to the town.
Excuse me, Charlie, what you said there?
That was, I have Tom Skirnish, my Mason supervisor on the line. He said the plans were submitted to the town.
The plan has
Okay.
the plans that the board member asked for?
Yes. But we can resubmit them.
Mr. Campbell, before we go too much further, who is that this was just speaking?
This is Charlie Shiravasi.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Mr. Kevin O'Brien?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, the plans that Mr. Chirafasi is referring to, they have been submitted to the building department for permits, and upon that submission, the building department realized that a zoning permit needed to be issued and that it had to go before the planning board. So the particular plans about how to build the building are in the building department, but what you have is a separate image of what they are proposing and where they are proposing it. So those building plans are not appropriate for your review.
Okay, I just asked for those plans because Mr. David was asking how the fueling area was going to operate with the proposed storage building, and since you can't tell where the doors are, where any of the openings are on the 4 blue lines, I just kind of figured that the fab drawings might just let shed a little light, that's all. But, no, whatever.
Anyone else? Christian?
Just a couple of questions. The full storage building looks like it's going over to replace those 2 storage containers that are on site. Are those 2 containers going to remain on site, or will they be relocated off?
I believe they've already been removed.
Okay, Mr. Campbell, did you answer that?
Yes, I'm sorry, Charlie, could you clarify your answer? You said they've been removed from the site. Will they be permanently removed from the site to your knowledge? Yes.
So Charlie says that they have already been moved, Mr. Pantina, and they're not coming back, correct?
No, my question wasn't about the trailers. My question was just to see what the proposed building was going to look like, to possibly shed some light on how the fueling area, possibly the drive-up fueling area, and the access, I guess, ingress and egress to the building would operate. That's all. Again, I know it's a cursory review. I just thought it would shed some light on it. But if it's not under our purview, that's fine. Just comment.
So what was your train of thought there, Ned? Was it that you wanted to know how it would impact the fueling area opposed to the building?
Right before I asked the question, Mr. David had asked, he had commented about the existing fueling area, and that it was probably something we reviewed last year, which it was. It was either this one or maybe behind the existing maintenance building, I'm not sure. But I thought he said, how will it affect the operations of each? So like I said, if you saw the FAD drawings, you'd be able to see where the man doors are, where the overhead doors are, and possibly it would help, but again, it's not a big deal. I'll retract my comment.
Okay, sounds good. Anyone else from the board? Mr. O'Brien, are you okay with this?
On the fueling area.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Campbell, you have the floor. Anything else for us?
No, I do have one consideration going forward if the board is going to deliberate about a report that was mentioned earlier from maybe the engineer, I'm not sure, it wasn't clear. But I've never seen this report. It's kind of came out with the virus, and I'm not that handy with technology. But I don't think anybody kind of sent me something that was not sort of my attention, certainly wasn't drawn to. But other than that, I'll just conclude our presentation by noting that our engineer and our employees have testified regarding this facility. And that it's, as per the requirements of the 40-55, etc., that it does meet criteria for a site plan, that's of course subsection 30. And it is consistent with the Kenilworth master plan, which is of course subsection 31. So based on that, based on the fact that this would be compliant with the Kenilworth master plan, which declares this area to be a public parking area, and this is a ancillary need for the park's use, Gallic Villages. I would assert that, again, that this is compliant with your master plan. It does not have any kind of negative impact or influence on Kenilworth. And based on that, and the fact that this is consistent also with the county master plan, I would urge the board to sign off on this. I guess that's what happens in the courtesy review. Not very much clear line courtesy reviews, to put it mildly. But I don't see, as I said, any kind of reason that Kenilworth would have to object to this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Thank you, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Sherrod, I believe I said that correctly, and of course, Mr. Russo.
Thank you. You're welcome.
At this point, Mr. Brago, I don't think we really vote on anything here because it is a courtesy review, but Mr. O'Brien is shaking his head as if we would vote to approve this, or I thought this courtesy review was just to an acknowledgement of what was going on. You want to bring me up to speed, Kevin?
I defer to Mr. Rego. Initially, my suggestion would be that should the board wish to make any suggestions or any comments regarding the project, that they be put into a resolution as prepared by Mr. Rego. I think that any formal action taken by the board should result in a resolution to summarize the board's activities and decisions. Mr. Rego?
Mr. Rego? Unmute, Mr. Rego. Mr. Rego, look over here.
Jeez. Okay?
He can't help you.
We good? Yes. Okay. It just, at a minimum, it memorializes the fact that we had a courtesy review, we heard it, there's a record, and again, especially, so we can put that into a resolution that we can adopt down the road at our next meeting. It won't hold up the county at all. And if there are any specific recommendations, again, non-binding that we have, we can put those into the resolution as suggestions, and we would vote as we normally would.
Fine. Does anyone have anything right now to place a condition on what they're doing there? I didn't hear anything other than maybe the size of the building and its location to the school that we approved last year, but other than that, I don't think there is anything. Do we all agree?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So, why don't we have a motion to, first of all, let me ask this. Is there anyone that has anything else to say about this? So, let me ask you,
I do have, sorry.
Who is that?
This is Mr. David.
Sorry, Mr. David. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I kind of forget the protocol in terms of comments from the public. Do we have to ask for, or turn this over to the public for comment? Mr. Mayor?
If there are public here that want to comment, fine. Again, with the proviso that we're not voting for or against. The only thing we're doing is acknowledging that we've heard it. That would be the vote, that we've concurred with the county. If there are any conditions, put them in, but if the public has any comments, we can certainly entertain them, and with the understanding that they're not going to, they may not find their way into a resolution.
So with that being said, why don't we do this? Let's have a motion to open this portion of the meeting to the public as protocol.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mr. David, seconded by who?
Mr. Mazzio.
Mr. Mazzio, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone from the public out there wishing to speak on this matter and this matter only?
Mr. Chairman, I do believe you have one member of the public that is currently attending this meeting virtually, and you have also provided in your meeting notice that anyone can call in during the public portion. There is a slight 30 to 60 second delay for YouTube Live, so if you would just mind waiting maybe a minute and a half.
Okay.
And if I get any calls here, I will let you know.
Okay, we will certainly wait. Thank you for that, Laura. Minute awfully seems like an awful long time all of a sudden, doesn't it?
It does.
30 seconds to go, Mr. Chairman.
I'm waiting for somebody to start with the do.
I think you can close, Rich.
Okay, motion, someone give us a motion to close, please?
Motion to close the public portion of the meeting. Sorry, I was second.
Motion to close was made by Mr. Grimaldi, seconded by Mr. David. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Going back to the business at hand, I think we need to have a motion to. I really don't know what to say here. Is that a permission to grant this, or we recognize, Mr. Ringo, help me out here?
It's not to grant or to deny. I think I would recommend that we concur, that we heard the county and we concur. And my resolution will set forth the basics. Just one example, the building is 30 by 50 feet. If they come back and build one that's 40 by 80, then that might be an issue. But the resolution would highlight the key elements of the project, and we concur. We've heard it, we concur, no recommendations. That's basically it.
So based on the testimony of Mr. Campbell and his professionals, I will first recognize Mr. Mazzio, who just raised his hand. Go ahead, Mr. Mazzio.
Due to the fact that at least two of the board members brought up concerns regarding the proximity to the fueling building that's adjacent, do we just add some type of note that we're going to assume that the county will take any and all measures to protect that building from any vehicular traffic caused by the new storage building? Something along those lines?
I'm sure Mr. Campbell wouldn't object to that, and there was the engineer, Mr. Alessa. Is that correct?
No, I think the same person would agree to that. But Paul, if you want to comment whether you think that the garage doors are near the fuel, please do so. I don't know if they are.
Well, I don't believe there'll be an issue. And I agree with you, Kevin. I don't think we would object to that, that particular comment being put in the resolution. I don't think it will have any adverse impact on the operation of the shed or the fueling station.
Thank you.
Mr. O'Brien?
Mr. Russo, are you able to scale off the distance between the fueling station and the proposed building? Is there enough of a drive aisle there to set this to rest?
Well, you know what, I can tell you this, just roughly speaking, as you look at the site plan, so you can see that the building is dimensioned at 30 by 50. So I would say that you have at least 30 feet between the existing fueling station, which is also an overhang because the pumps are under there. So there's even more than 30 feet between where the building will be and the actual pumps. And typically, driveway double width, could be lanes are 12 feet. So that would be if you had two lanes going either way, that would be 24 feet. We're certainly in excess of that. So there should be plenty of room to avoid any kind of conflict between the operation of the fueling area and the proposed shed location.
Thank you.
Inadequate, Mr. O'Brien. Mr. Rayla, do I need to hold up that sign? Mr. Rayla? Go ahead, Lou.
Press the button, Lou.
No, not on the
Oh! Yeah, okay?
There you go.
We good? Is there a need for a condition then if those are the facts on the ground? In terms of,
I would say not, but I'd like to hear from the board. But if Mr. Lasso is a polished engineer who has looked at the plan and said that it's 30 plus feet from the fuel station, and Mr. Campbell said only a fool would put that building on top of the fuel, I mean, that's I think that's good enough for me. I don't know about the board members, but I'm sure they're not going to put it on top. Anyone want to comment on that?
I'm good with that, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shelby. I got you. I'm just looking at Nick sideways over there. So, okay. Anyone else?
My battery died.
Okay, can we have a motion to say thank you very much for the presentation by Mr. Campbell and his professionals, and we will now hear from Mr. Grimaldi.
Making a motion to say thank you.
Okay. Someone want to second that?
I second the motion that the board concurs with the application that was presented.
So, Mr. Grimaldi made the motion, Mr. David seconded the motion that we concur with everything that the professionals and Mr. Campbell said. Roll call, please.
Mr. Paserno?
Yes.
Mr. Schilke?
Yes.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Grimaldi?
Yes.
Mr. Cantina?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzio?
Yes.
Mr. Ladowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Corella?
Yes.
Mr. Scuderi?
Yes.
Mr. Hobelario?
Yes.
Mr. Saharcheck?
Yes.
And Mr. McMahon?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, and good luck with your project.
I'd like to thank the board for their cooperation and courtesy, and just on a funny note, I'd like the board to know that I put on a dress shirt and a tie for this camera that's never there. Thank you again.
Now you just got to get Mike Brennan to do that. Okay.
Good night, everybody. Thank you and stay well.
Thank you. Take care. Take care, guys. Okay. Bye. So I think now we're up to the master plan consistency review for a land use ordinance. Is that correct?
No, we did that. I think we did that.
No, we did that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're on the resolution.
We're going to the resolution, the authorization of the borough planner to conduct a redevelopment study and insert the block and lot. So now I was a little ahead of myself earlier. So Mr. O'Brien, would you like to take the floor with that?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I was in a bit of a rush to get out of Borough Hall this afternoon to get to my office so I'd be at this meeting on time. So when I gave these words to Ms. Mushida to insert the block and lot, I meant to insert the block and lot. It would be part of our resolution.
That's why I read it. I mean, I'm glad someone picked up on it. Insert block and lot.
Oh, Kevin, I took you literally. Oh my gosh. Sorry.
Should have explained better. My apologies.
Mr. David, it says insert block and lot.
I saw that and I was wondering, I had some comments to make about it, but I'll keep them to myself.
Put your name here. So we will insert the block and lot. So Chairman, the resolution you have in front of you comes from the Borough Council. Borough Council has directed the planning board, us, to conduct a study of the North 26th Street redevelopment area as defined by the Borough Council. Our step is to then direct me, your planner, to conduct that redevelopment study and recommend to the planning board whether that property qualifies as a redevelopment area. Currently, the Borough Council has directed us to make this non-condemnation. There are two categories of condemnation, non-condemnation. Non-condemnation means that the borough will not exercise any of its legal rights to take this property, and instead the transaction is being done on a voluntary basis by all parties. So there's no eminent domain, no condemnation on the part of the borough. These are consenting parties who are working together. The study itself will go through criteria that the New Jersey statute has in place. Backtrack just for a moment. When we review use variances, occasionally we do, our power is based upon whether or not that application meets what we call the burden of proof, and we've got that three-pronged process, special reasons, positive criteria, negative criteria, all laid out in the statute. And that is the criteria by which we review those use variances. Similar situation with redevelopment. The New Jersey statute puts out about a dozen criteria. And if an area meets any of those criteria or more, then it can be labeled an area in need of redevelopment. And the study that you are authorizing to be done is to go through that criteria, to look at that site very carefully, do the research into the archives, into our files, and determine whether or not that area can be labeled an area in need of redevelopment. That study then comes back to you, the planning board. Planning board can adopt, revise, reject. And based upon what you do, you then send your recommendation to the Borough Council, and by ordinance, should you adopt it, either as is or with revisions, you would send that to the Borough Council. The Borough Council would then adopt it by ordinance. If you turn it down, you send that to Borough Council as well, then they have to decide what they do then. So it's a process. It takes time. The professional planning study has got to be done, which takes time. And all of the parameters of that property have to be looked at very, very carefully so that the board is extremely comfortable in making its determination when you get the study in front of you. That's an overview. I welcome all questions.
Anyone have any questions at this point for Mr. O'Brien? Really? This is a study that's going to take approximately how long in your estimation, Kevin?
I'd like to maintain some flexibility on this. As we know, this is a large site. It's been an industrial site. There's an awful lot that needs to be looked at in determining whether or not whether this meets the criteria. So I would ask for the board's flexibility at this point in determining the due date, and I will consult with the board. I'll consult with the redeveloper and give you a better idea of that at our next meeting. If the board is pleased with that.
Okay, Mr.
Brian?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yeah, Mr. Brian, does your study include environmental study or testing, or would that be included in your report, or?
It does not include any independent environmental testing, but we do take a look at the status of the environmental state of the site, and we include that in there. And that may be referring to documents from the redeveloper, but that aspect has to be considered and addressed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rego.
Kevin, can I be heard?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, Kevin, I'm assuming that your studies would also include photos, maps of the area, which the statute calls for maps. Just so anyone reading it can have a really good sense of the property itself. Is that accurate on my part?
That is correct. The statute requires a map that will be provided.
All right.
As well as other documentation.
All right. And when Kevin completes a report, we have to have a hearing on it. The planning board does. It's noticed hearing, and people can comment on it. And as Kevin said, if the planning board signs off on it, it goes to the governing body, which has the option then to put that area into a redevelopment zone. Then, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, Kevin would be, we would be tasked with the idea of, or Kevin would be, with coming up with a redevelopment plan. the actual what's going to go on the property, what does the borough want to see on this property, and then we would again down the road look at that plan to see if it's consistent with the criteria, and any redeveloper would come in having to meet that plan.
Correct.
Mr. O'Brien, would you need any assistance from our engineering people, Victor Veneta and Christian? Do you need any assistance there? Is this a study that you're going to present, and if you needed to tap into their information on the property at hand, would you be tapping into that at that point?
Noting, Mr. Chairman, that it is after 5 o'clock, we will definitely be tapping into that. I will be consulting with Mr. Venega and Mr. Cueta.
Anyone else?
So question to that, Mr. Chairman, this is Mr. David. Who funds our professionals to do the study? I mean, this is not coming from the board's normal stipend, so how is their effort being funded?
Mr. O'Brien, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. The redeveloper will establish an escrow account which will pay for that study.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien.
Fairly significant escrow. For any of us that need to, if it's myself, Christian, Kevin, that escrow would fund those enterprises.
Very good.
That's the way we like it. Anyone else? So basically, the council has already voted on this, and now it's coming to us. Correct, Kevin? You okay, Mr. Ryder?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay, so basically, if no one has any questions for Kevin, we need to take a vote on this and to have a motion.
So I'll make a motion to authorize the borough planner to conduct a redevelopment study.
Hold on 1 second, Mr. David, he is...
Sorry to interrupt, gentlemen. Mr. Chairman, I do note that the attorney for the redeveloper is on our meeting. That's.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Paparo.
I don't know if it's appropriate for you to hear him at this point. I just want to let you know that he's present.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Paparo. I'm sorry. You went on and off so many times. I see you now. Would you like to comment and add to this at this point?
No, Chairman. I think I'm here as a passive observer. I know this is the matter that the board needs to take under consideration on its own, like a typical resolution, and again, I'm just observing the proceedings.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I think we can just go ahead at this point with our motion. If there's nothing else, Mr. David?
Okay, I'll repeat. So I make a motion to authorize the borough planner to conduct a redevelopment study, which we don't have the block and lot, but for the appropriate block and lot.
Yeah. Motion by David.
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Mazzio. Roll call, please.
Mr. Paserno?
Yes.
Mr. Shilkey?
Yes.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Grimaldi? Yes, okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Cantina?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzio?
Yes.
Mr. Ladowdy?
Yes.
Mr. Corello?
Yes.
Mr. Scuderi?
Yes.
Mr. Hoberlario?
Yes.
Mr. Zaharchek? Are you still there?
Gone.
Gone. Mr. McMahon?
Yes.
Okay. All right, Kevin, we want that report on our desk tomorrow.
Okay. Sounds good, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, any comments for the good of the board? Seeing none.
I make to open the meeting to the public.
Mr. David made a motion to open the meeting to the public. Seconded by Mr. Scuderi. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone from the public wishing to speak at this point? And I think we still have to wait for that full minute. Am I correct, Laura?
Chairman, I have begun the timer for 2-minute count.
Thank you. have to say, while we're waiting, I think this went a lot smoother than I think everyone thought it was going to go. So thank you very much, everyone. Hi, Mr. Shelby.
Hello.
Chairman?
Yes.
It's Mr. Barrow from Poison of Borough. Can I be recognized?
Yes, well, this portion is open to the public. I'm sure you can, yes.
Sure. Since I'm here, I just wanted to provide a block and lot, if that's what you're looking for your resolution.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I think we have that. It's a
block 183, block 183, lot 9.
Block 183, lot 9. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Joe. You took us past the minute mark.
Did she say we're past the minute mark?
Yeah, 1 minute. We have one more to go.
30 seconds to go, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, let's see if we can hold up after 30. So, Joe, Carla, where you're sitting, if you move a little to the right, it will look like you have a halo around your head with that nice decorative piece on your wall.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect.
Two minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, 2 minutes are up. Mr. David?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion was made by Mr. David.
Second, Shelby.
Seconded by Mr. Shelby. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, everyone.
We have
Nice job, Kathy and Warren. Thank you.
Wait, Kevin has his hand up.
We have Kevin still up. Sorry, Kevin.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Chairman. This moved rather rapidly. Just to remind everybody that our next meeting is going to be July 9th. And I think we should all prepare to have another Zoom unless things change. Wanted to give everybody a heads up if, Chairman, you think that's appropriate.
No, I think that's great. I think regardless, we're going to set it up for a Zoom meeting, and I think when we post our meeting, I don't know if we have to do an and or, because maybe things will open up by that time, but we will definitely have a meeting. We will definitely have it by way of Zoom or at the town hall.
We'll need to make a decision about 2 weeks out, Chairman. That way the notice will be for what it is.
So why don't we just do this? Regardless of what's going on in our environment, let's just have the Zoom meeting to keep the confusion down. I think it's worked just fine. What do we have up for next session anyway?
The REL case.
Right, the O'Reilly case has been, it's been carried to July.
Yes.
We have RJB Nevis at 121 South Michigan Avenue. That's been scheduled for July. And at this point, that is all I think that's going to be on. There's another 2 applications in process, but I think given the Zoom meeting format, let's start with 2 and then
go from there.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Grimaldi?
If we could ask the applicants again to provide PDFs on a jump drive, Kathy, I'll make sure we screen them and then send them back to the board again.
Okay.
Thanks for doing that again, Mr. Grimaldi. That was very nice of you to do it for the rest of this meeting.
No worries.
Okay. Okay, anyone else?
Laura?
Laura, there you are. Hi.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to let you know that at the council meeting, there was a projected date given for the opening of the borough. Back to the public again, and we're projecting it to be July 6th. We're looking at that's just opening the building back to the public. We're also projecting to possibly have our first council meeting back in the building, in person, on August 9th, 26th, my apologies. But again, that depends on where the numbers are trending, but that's what we're hoping for.
So then I guess it would be prudent for us to stay with the Zoom meeting for July 9th.
Yes, we already do have that scheduled, and if it makes the members feel a little bit better, once you register for this meeting, this one that you just had today, it should be much easier to get on for the next meeting.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you. Well, and as someone already said, thank you, Laura, so much, and Kathy, for walking us through this. You made it very, very simple, and I know that it took a lot of time out of your night tonight, so we really appreciate that. I mean, you guys do a great job. Thank you so much. Yes. Motion to adjourn, someone?
We already were, but anyway.
I didn't hear you do that, but that's great. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.